Some of our greatest American presidents have lacked the physical characteristics to commend them to the post. Franklin Delano Roosevelt suffered from the physical disability of polio. He could barely stand up or walk. You know the challenge he had. And yet it may have been just that physical impairment that gave him sympathy for the struggles of the common person during the time of the Great Depression and the Second World War. Roosevelt's faith gave him courage, and that courage gave him the mettle to be able to give leadership to this nation during very difficult times. People don't often talk about the faith of Roosevelt. Actually, there's a new book that's soon to come out by our own Christine Wicker that's going to address that, so there's a plug for her book. Thank you, Christine. But what about Abraham Lincoln? His granite figure sits majestically on that monument in Washington, D.C., right? Did you know he might have had a genetic disease called Marfan syndrome? He was called a monkey by his political opponents, partly because of his lanky, gangly appearance, characteristic of Marfan. Not sure that he had it. Evidence is mixed. But one patient with Marfan said this: the fact that Lincoln may have had Marfan syndrome shows those of us that we too can contribute something of value to society. It's time that all people, especially medical ethicists, realize that having the Marfan syndrome is not shameful, it's just darned inconvenient. One researcher has said about the possibility of his being so afflicted that the community of patients with genetic disorders can now be assured that the well-respected figure whose iconic face is carved into Mount Rushmore almost certainly had a genetic mutation, and it did not hinder his many accomplishments. This is why it's so important that everyone who enters this church be treated as a person of extraordinary worth. Who they are on the outside is less important than who they are on the inside. Because it just may be that any of us that is called to be part of this congregation, regardless of what our appearance is, our color, our background, our personality, maybe they are just the gift God wants to give us to be the kind of church and the kind of people that God wants us to be. And therefore, we have to learn to live from the inside out and to measure ourselves that way.